I want to ask you if you believe that the collapse is orchestrated in order to bring in central bank digital currencies. And do you think, you mentioned a timeline to me before that was anywhere from 2 months to 3 years. What are the realistic steps that you think they'll take to get us there?
So the system is going to collapse of its own weight. And if you know that it's going to collapse, wouldn't you like to introduce a system where you're in control of the new system? So that's what I believe is going on. They can't, a lot of people say, are they doing this on purpose? Well, it was going to happen anyways. So, and if it's going to happen, wouldn't you like to control it on the way down and get rid of the regional banks and make the banking system very consolidated into 6 big banks in the US, so that then it would be a lot easier to introduce a central bank digital currency. And so banking becomes like a utility, pretty much owned by the government and linked to the central bank digital currency. And then from there, once the central bank digital currency is linked to all your credit cards and bank accounts, then social controls can be implemented. You can't have, if you're a dissenter like me, talking about truth, they shut you down. It's just shut off your account. If they decided that cow farts are a big thing and they don't want you to eat meat, you'll have a quota. You go to the cash register and you try to ring up your meat, and then the woman at the cash register says, "It won't let me ring you up." That's the kind of control, end-to-end control. It is literally a prison planet, so to speak.
And another important thing to us as well as a central bank, because it's CBDC, it's central bank money. In a month, or I expect 2 months' time, we will change our legislation. Our CBDC is a legal tender. Basically, you only expose the risk to the central bank.
As challenging economies in the world, are you still bullish about CBDCs?
Thank you, Sir Anthony. For sure. I mean, CBDC is a structural story. It's not a cyclical story. This is an evolution that, in our opinion, is inevitable. It will happen. As you said before, it's just a question of when and how, not if. In fact, I'm still surprised to see so many central bankers around the world being even skeptical about the need for CBDCs. We used to have letters written on paper with pen and posted and so on, and today everybody uses emails, of course. We used to have landlines. Today we do video calls, and in this respect, we have cash, and in the digital world, we will have CBDCs. It's as simple as that. Use cases will come. The platform will be provided by the technology that they are piloting in the UK and some other parts of the world. And then when technology is available, that will help policy implementation. Let me make two examples. Fiscal policy, monetary policy. Fiscal policy. We need to provide stimulus sometimes. If we can provide targeted stimulus, it's so much better. And the programmability of payments that is enabled by CBDCs helps that, facilitate tremendously. Monetary policy. We all have faced the problems of having a lower bound, whether it's zero or effective. It's very hard to cut rates below zero. Why? Because you have cash that can be used as a substitute to avoid, say, the negative deposit rate. But once cash will be slowly phased out, I'm not saying immediately, but slowly phased out, then potentially central bankers can implement very negative interest rates. So the zero will not be a bound anymore. It will be just one of the many numbers out there. And the yield curve can be steep even when long-term rates are so low. That's the challenge that we have faced in the last few years.
Thank you.
The digital euro is on the move. Yesterday, the Governing Council of the ECB approved the opening of the preparation phase. It will be a journey, and we will walk the journey together with the legislator. All European institutions will be involved to make sure that Europe is equipped with the currency of the future. Cash is here to stay. You will have all options, cash and digital cash. So what does it mean for you? For consumers, it would be free and easy to use everywhere in the euro area. All of that, of course, is subject to the legislative process. Cash or digital, the choice will be yours. The digital euro is on the move.
No, the problem is they don't want to be controlled. They don't want to.
Yeah, but you know what? Now we have in Europe this threshold. Above 1,000 euros, you cannot pay cash. If you do, you're on the grey market. So you take your risk. You get caught, you are fined, or you go in jail. But, the digital euro is going to have a limited amount of control. There will be control, you're right. You're completely right. We are considering whether for very small amounts, anything that is around 300, 400 euros, we could have a mechanism where there is zero control. But that could be dangerous. The terrorist attacks on France back 10 years ago were entirely financed by those very small anonymous credit cards that you can recharge in total anonymity.
The United States Federal Reserve is considering the creation of a digital dollar. Cybercurrencies have many supporters, yet critics warn they would be a privacy nightmare.
One currency expert claims the removal of cash would push America closer to a totalitarian state. Dale Hurd has the story.
Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell told the House Financial Services Committee in March that the Fed had already begun testing a digital dollar.
What we're doing is experimenting in kind of early stage experimentation. How would this work? Does it work? What's the best technology? What's the most efficient?
Just like paper dollars, a central bank digital currency, or CBDC, would be issued by the Federal Reserve. Those pushing for it say it would have several advantages over physical money. They say it could be used to fight inflation because the Fed would have more direct control over the money supply. It could speed up transaction payments and help fight money laundering.
The ability to track transactions has a couple of elements that are very attractive to economic policymakers. One is to know where people are spending their money. Another is to track taxes and prevent evasion and that sort of thing.
Backers say the U.S. needs a digital dollar if it wants to remain the world's reserve currency. Opponents warn that it could be a very effective instrument of government control. Physical money has been called one of the last bastions of privacy. Laws like the Bank Secrecy Act have already stripped away most of the privacy from bank accounts and financial transactions.
Banks have really a ton of power that people don't realize to shut down accounts, to freeze accounts, and to end up holding them for really any number of reasons.
Currency expert James Rickards says a digital currency would move America closer to a totalitarian state.
If I buy anything, the government doesn't know it. MasterCard kind of knows it, but even MasterCard uses product codes. So they don't say, Jim bought a Snickers. It says Jim bought miscellaneous merchandise at a retail place. So the government doesn't know what you're doing. But with this new central bank digital currency, they will, because they maintain the ledger. So if I buy, Ron DeSantis' new book, or I go to a Donald Trump rally, or whatever it may be, the government, using artificial intelligence and having that information, which they would, are able to profile you. They say, well, this guy kind of looks like a conservative and maybe he's MAGA. And then you've got a target on your back.
Last year, a Canadian court froze millions of dollars raised for truckers blocking roads to protest COVID-19 vaccine mandates. When the Pakistani government was faced with almost nonstop protest last year, it threatened to switch off the bank accounts of the protesters. A digital dollar could not only be switched off, The Fed would be able to force negative interest rates on Americans if it wanted them to spend more, penalizing savers. Digital cash might also be an easy target for hackers. On the bank-to-bank level, a real-time payment system called FedNow is expected to begin in July. It's not a digital currency, but an upgrade to what some call our antiquated banking system.
FedNow service is an instant payments infrastructure that financial institutions can use to clear and settle payments instantly.
Large bank deposits will be expected to clear much faster than they do now. But when it comes to a digital dollar, Fed Chairman Powell has admitted he's not at all confident that Americans want it. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, this ought to send a chill down your spine when you read in the book of Revelation that there'll come a day where you can't buy or sell. The digital currency actually enables that. If there's physical currency, and whether that's coins or paper money, you get to have that, and you get to have physical possession of it. And so you can go to a marketplace and you can buy. You can also take your products to a marketplace and sell them and get cash. And the government's not involved in that transaction at all. They don't even know it's happening. But in a digital currency, they will know exactly what you're buying and how much you're paying for it and who you bought it from. So now you have absolute control that they could shut off your digital currency. And in that shut off, you don't get to buy and you don't get to sell. Now, if you don't think this is something that a government can really do, let's go back to 2012, where Lois Lerner is working at the IRS in the tax-exempt branch, and she denies tax-exempt status to any group that's got Tea Party in the name. She denies their ability to have that status, so the contributions to that political cause were shut down. And she did it intentionally. And it looks like she had regular meetings in the White House. And I don't know if they discussed it, but why in the world is the head of the tax-exempt branch meeting regularly in the White House? So look at this. This should be something that every American says, no, we value our privacy. And I would encourage you, I'm starting to do this more and more. When you have the chance to use cash, please use it. It will actually protect you in the future.
Hoping people wake up enough to at least slow it down. Because these people are pushing in a very obvious and very specific direction. They want digital currency, centralized digital currency that they control, and they want to get everybody on a social credit score system. They're probably connected to some sort of a vaccine app, or if you want to travel around, all they would need is another pandemic to try to push that shit through. And they're already talking about that. It's very spooky, because when you look into the history of this lab and them funding it and this getting out and the way they responded to it, the whole thing is so scary because it was effective. It was effective and very, very financially effective. I mean, they made a lot of fucking money.
Yeah.
And if they could do something similar again and then clamp down more on people, that's what scares me. This talk of centralized digital currency, that's what they have in China. If you fuck up in China and you get a bad social credit score because you tweeted something they didn't like, now you can't buy a plane ticket. Now you can't buy a car.
Yeah.
Now you can't get a loan. Now you can't do something. You step the fucking line, and people self-censor because they don't want to be a part of that. Now they got you. Here we know that the government was involved in silencing different voices. You know, they stopped that Hunter Biden laptop story from getting out before the election. It's so obviously dirty shit.
All around the world, central bank digital currencies are either in pilot scheme or executive order stage in the States, or they're floating under the radar.
Every person that I come in contact with in the public, I ask them, do you know what a CBDC is, or a central bank digital currency? And nobody knows.
The central bank digital currency is basically what we have now, so it's fiat currency, but it's going to be entirely digital, which means absolutely in the control of the government and the central banks.
Such a system would give the state full access to the details of all transactions, as well as the ability to cut off an individual's money supply with the flick of a digital switch
The CEO of the Bank for International Settlements recently told the world that the great thing about central bank digital currency was that they could track every transaction.
We tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that.
What he just told you is if you're not allowed to buy chocolate, your money won't work to buy chocolate. If you're not allowed to go more than 5 kilometers from your home, your car or your money won't work more than 5 kilometers from your home. And those rules can be dictated and controlled at a phenomenally central level.
Central bank digital currencies are programmable. So it essentially means that it's a much easier way to push agendas, political agendas. For example, the World Economic Forum is talking about implementing a carbon allowance. So every individual will be given a certain amount of carbon that they are allowed to emit into the atmosphere. With a central bank digital currency, this becomes far more efficient because with a click of a button, you literally just program the money. And so if for whatever reason you buy too many burgers, too many sausages one week, when you go to fill up your car, your money could be cancelled. It could get declined simply because you use too much of your carbon allowance, essentially. Or even if you go to buy a plane ticket, it could get cancelled. So it's much easier to push forward political agendas and political ideologies when you have money which is programmable with just a click of a button.
It actually gives government pretty much total control over our lives because they can just press a button and close our bank accounts. No, they wouldn't do that now, would they? Well, think about it. Those Canadian truckers, they were legally and lawfully going about their business driving trucks, but legislation came in demanding that unless they'd been double vaxxed, they couldn't continue in their cabins doing long-distance lorry driving. And they protested, and in the end, their bank accounts were closed down by the Canadian government.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoking emergency powers against the truckers who are protesting vaccine mandates. Banks can now freeze their personal accounts.
If your truck is being used in these illegal blockades, your corporate accounts will be frozen. With a central bank digital currency, if you do not hold the correct opinion, and if you're not a good citizen, then absolutely that money will be programmed to be used against you.
Our previous Chancellor, now unelected Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is clearly a big fan.
Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote. It's all part of the wider story of digital innovation that has delivered benefits to millions around the world and in the UK.
What would the benefits be to the general public?
Ease of use, I think, would be the only benefit.
Convenience.
Convenience, and that's how they're going to sell it.
The arguments for it are clear. It'll be quick, easy, cheap to transact. There'll be no problems at all, no loose change lying around. There'll be lots and lots of arguments for it.
But they won't tell you everything else. They won't tell you how it will be programmed. They won't tell you that it's a spy coin. They won't tell you that they're trying to phase out cash and that they want to track absolutely everything that you're doing.
The cons definitely outweigh any type of pros when it comes to, programming it for benefits and things like that. Because the money can also expire. Not enough people talk about that. During times of economic uncertainty, central banks like to print more money in order to stimulate the economy. But we could get to a point where instead of printing money, they say, well, if you don't spend 10% of your savings in the next 3 months, then this money is going to expire simply because they need that money to change hands.
If I want to double taxes and just take it out of your account, no problem.
They can take your taxes out without you having to bother to pay. They can decide what comes to them first.
This is Richard Werner, the top academic scholar in the world on central banking.
Also, they never talk about the nature of this CBDC. What is it actually going to look like? They never talk about that. But I heard one European central banker tell me what it's going to look like. He saw it. He was invited to one of the old central banks in Europe that are very much promoting this. They showed him. And, he's a top, executive director of another central bank in Europe, and there's no reason to believe that he was telling me a story. And he was around this large and would be implanted under your skin. So that is the plan.
I had a friend, Nick Rockefeller, who was one of the Rockefeller family. And one of the things that we used to talk about was the ultimate plan of the banking industry, what they wanted to accomplish. The ultimate goal that these people have in mind is to create a one world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips. There'll be no more cash. And this is getting me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And you become a slave. You become a serf to these people. That's their goal.
The goal of this manipulation, and has been for a very long time, is to get the world population to see as a good idea, or the only option in given circumstances that are manipulated into place, the creation of a one world government, a world central bank which would administer all financial transactions on the planet, a world currency which wouldn't be coins and notes, it would be merely electronic, cashless society for which there are fundamental implications for freedom, and a microchipped population linked to a global computer, the latter of which sounds bizarre to many people on first hearing, except that we are ridiculously close to it and the technology already exists.
Tony Danner is standing at a new frontier in technology. The chip in his hand allows him to start his car, open doors, log onto his computer, and buy snacks in the break room, all with just a swipe of his hand.
You scan it at the kiosk, it comes up on the kiosk, and then to finalize your payment, you put your RFID chip.
The most cutting-edge thing about Hannes Huerblad isn't the phone in his hand, it's the microchip actually in his hand. The tiny implant is steadily becoming a part of normal life in Sweden. Thousands already have microchip implants that they use in their daily lives, waving their hand to gain entrance to the gym, confirm their ID, or make payments.
What they're trying to do is take the financial system all digital. And we're trying to prevent that from happening because, and I don't care whether it's a central bank digital currency or your Visa card, once you have 100% digital, then you can have central digital control.
Using cash is one of the things we can do to make sure the hurdle will be higher for the central planners to introduce the CBDC.
Use cash every day if you can. If you can persuade 10 members of your friends and family to do the same, and then persuade 10 members of their family or friends, and we spread this virally, there would be a revolution. We have the power individually to shift the entire state of affairs.
We have the power to stop this. The only way this can succeed is if people like you and people like me sit on our ass, sit on the couch, don't get up, don't show up, and go along with it.
If you look at the global control grid, it is us, we the people, who are financing it. We are going to work and we are building it. We are spending money in it. We are supporting it. We are supporting the people who are leading it. And we have the power to stop because they are few and we are many. And if we just stop helping, they can't do it.
Everybody has power. Every single person. Because when you get a whole bunch of people, even if they have a little bit of power each, and you put it all together, now they got a lot of power. Now they can make governments do what they want.
You think a snowflake is powerless until you realize enough of them get together, they can shut down New York City. There are millions and millions of people all over the world fighting. People are pushing back all over, and it's very significant. The human race does not want to be controlled. Freedom has won every time, and every time it looked hopeless. What they're trying to do is so against the fundamental wisdom in the universe that they will fail. You have nothing to lose by fighting it all the way down to the wire every day, because the alternative is something not only do you not want to live in it, but you do not want to arrive at the pearly gates and say that your soul accepted it.
I just left the room where we had the negotiations about the digital identity, and I have bad news. The member states and the European Parliament came to an agreement. That means that probably not far from now, the digital identity will be a fact in the European Union. Right after this agreement, Commissioner Breton said, now we have the digital identity wallet, we have to put something in it. And what he meant was the digital euro, also known as the central bank digital currency. And this is a very bad development. They always promise us not to make this connection. And even a lot of experts, privacy experts and security experts, warned also last week this is a very bad idea for our privacy and our freedom. And still, this digital identity is pushed through. But it's not too late, because we still have to vote on this in the plenary. So what you can do, send your MEP from your member state an email and tell him or tell her that you are against this tool.